The bitter November wind whipped across the plains of Wyoming Territory in 1872, carrying with it the scent of snow and the desperate prayers of Eleanor Pierce as she collapsed against the weathered fence post marking the entrance to the Elkhorn Ranch. Her swollen belly protruded beneath her threadbare coat, hands trembling as she clutched the small bundle of possessions that represented all she had left in the world. Quinn Evans saw her fall from the window of his cabin. He'd been watching the storm roll in, calculating how many hours remained before the first real blizzard of the season would hit his property. The sight of a woman clearly with child crumpling at his fence line sent him sprinting through the door without pausing for his coat. "Madam, madam, can you hear me?" Quinn knelt beside her, his calloused hands gentle as he brushed the tangled auburn hair from her face. Her skin was pale as parchment, lips tinged blue from cold and what he suspected was hunger. Eleanor's eyes fluttered open, revealing irises the color of spring moss. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I just need somewhere to rest. Just for tonight." Her hand moved protectively over her rounded abdomen. "You're in no condition to be anywhere but inside, and quick." Quinn scooped her into his arms, surprised at how little she weighed despite her pregnancy. "Storm's coming in fast. Let's get you warm." Eleanor had no strength to protest as the tall stranger carried her toward a sturdy log cabin. The world spun around her, darkness creeping in at the edges of her vision. She had walked for so long, fled so far, that finding kindness felt almost foreign. "I'm Quinn Evans," he said as he shouldered open the door. "This is my ranch." "Eleanor," she managed before consciousness slipped away. "Eleanor Pierce." Quinn laid her gently on his bed, anxiety tightening his chest. He tended to injured ranch hands, delivered calves, and once even pulled a bullet from his own shoulder, but a pregnant woman was beyond his experience. Still, he recognized the signs of starvation and exposure. He stoked the fire until the room glowed with warmth, then heated broth from the stew he'd made that morning. When Eleanor's eyes opened again, he was sitting beside her, a steaming mug in his hands. "Small sips," he instructed, helping her to a semi-sitting position. "Too much too fast will make you sick." Eleanor's hands shook so badly that Quinn had to help her hold the mug. "Thank you," she whispered between careful sips. "I don't know what would have happened if—" "No need to think on that now," Quinn interrupted gently. "You're safe here." As warmth returned to her body, Eleanor became more aware of her surroundings. The cabin was small but immaculately kept. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with well-worn volumes. A guitar rested in the corner next to a rocking chair. It was a bachelor's home, but one built with care. "How far along are you?" Quinn asked, nodding toward her belly. 7 months, I think." Her hand instinctively moved to cradle her unborn child. "I've lost track of the exact days." Quinn's expression remained neutral, though his mind raced with questions. No wedding ring, no husband in sight. A pregnant woman alone on the frontier rarely had a happy story to tell. "You need to rest," he said instead of prying. "We can talk more when you've had some sleep." Eleanor sank back against the pillows, relief and exhaustion overtaking her. "But this is your bed. I can't. I've slept in worse places than my own floor." Quinn assured her with a small smile. "Rest now. You're carrying precious cargo." As Eleanor drifted into the first peaceful sleep she'd had in months, Quinn sat in his rocking chair, staring into the fire. 29 years he'd lived, the last 7 alone on this ranch after returning from the war. He'd built a good life here, if a solitary one. Now this woman and her unborn child had literally fallen at his doorstep, and some instinct deep in his soul told him nothing would ever be the same again. The following morning, Eleanor woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. For a moment, disorientation gripped her, the unfamiliar ceiling, the warm blankets, the absence of fear that had been her constant companion for so long. Then memory returned. The ranch, the storm, the tall, broad-shouldered man with kind eyes who had carried her inside. She pushed herself up slowly, her body aching from months of hardship. The cabin was empty, but a fire crackled in the hearth, and she could hear movement from what must be a kitchen area beyond the main room. "You're awake." Quinn appeared in the doorway, wiping his hands on a towel. "How are you feeling?" "Better," Eleanor replied, though the words seemed inadequate. "I'm sorry to impose on you this way, Mr. Evans." "Quinn," he corrected. "And there's no imposition. No one should be out in that storm." He nodded toward the window where snow was falling heavily, painting the world beyond in white. "Looks like you might be stuck here a few days. The pass to town will be blocked until it clears." Eleanor's heart sank. "I should go as soon as possible. I don't want to burden you." Quinn studied her, taking in the shadows beneath her eyes, the hollowness in her cheeks that spoke of long hunger. "Where exactly were you planning to go, Mrs. Pierce?" "Miss," she corrected automatically. "And I don't know. West, I suppose. I heard there are opportunities in Oregon." Quinn raised an eyebrow. "That's another 1,000 miles, at least. Not a journey anyone should make alone, especially not in your condition and with winter setting in." Eleanor looked down at her hands, twisted together atop the blanket. She'd known her plan was desperate, but hearing it stated so plainly made her realize just how close to death she'd come. "Are you hungry?" Quinn asked, changing the subject. "I've made breakfast." The simple meal of bacon, eggs, and biscuits was the finest feast Eleanor could remember. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, aware of Quinn's watchful gaze. "Thank you," she said when she'd finished, "for all of this." Quinn nodded. "You're welcome to stay until the weather clears enough for travel. But I think you should know it might be spring before the mountain passes are reliable again." Eleanor's face paled. "I can't impose for months. I'll find work in town once the road clears. I can sew, cook, clean. No one in Elkhorn Creek will hire a woman in your condition," Quinn said bluntly but not unkindly. "And once they realize you're unmarried." He didn't need to finish. Eleanor knew all too well how the world viewed women like her. It was why she'd fled Philadelphia in the first place, leaving behind the only home she'd ever known after her father had disowned her. "I need to be honest with you," she said, gathering her courage. "The father of my child was a man of means, engaged to another woman. When he discovered I was with child, he denied everything. My father believed him over me and cast me out. I've been working my way west for months, but winter came faster than I expected." Quinn's expression didn't change. "Your past is your business, Miss Pierce. I'm not one to judge." "Most people do," she said softly. "I'm not most people." Quinn stood and gathered their plates. "I fought in the war. Saw things that taught me life's too short and precious for casting stones." That afternoon, as the storm howled outside, Quinn showed Eleanor around the cabin. It was larger than it had first appeared, with the main room serving as bedroom and living area, plus a kitchen, a small second bedroom currently used for storage, and a workshop attached to the back where Quinn repaired tack and tools. "It's not much," he admitted, "but it's warm and solid." "It's wonderful," Eleanor said sincerely. "Did you build it yourself?" Quinn nodded. "Started with just the main room 7 years ago when I claimed this land. Added on bit by bit." "You've been alone all this time?" Something flickered in his eyes, a shadow of old pain. "By choice. Came back from the war not much interested in company." Eleanor didn't press further. She understood the need for privacy regarding one's wounds, both visible and hidden. Over the next few days, as the storm continued to rage, they fell into an unexpected rhythm. Quinn went out only to tend to the livestock in the barn. returning with snow crusting his beard and hat. Eleanor, gaining strength from regular meals and rest, insisted on helping with cooking and mending. In the evenings, Quinn read aloud from one of his books while Eleanor sewed patches on his work shirts. It was a domestic peace neither had experienced in years, if ever. For Eleanor, whose childhood had been dominated by her father's strict rules and cold demeanor, the simple kindness Quinn showed her was revolutionary. For Quinn, whose years since the war had been marked by solitude broken only by necessary trips to town, having someone to share meals and conversation with awakened something he'd thought long dead. On the 5th day, as Quinn read from a volume of Whitman's poetry, Eleanor felt a sharp pain that made her gasp. Quinn was at her side immediately, book forgotten. "What is it? The baby?" Eleanor nodded, breathing through the discomfort. "Just a strong kick, I think. He or she has been more active lately." Quinn hesitated, then asked, "May I?" His hand hovered near her rounded belly. The request surprised her, but Eleanor nodded. Quinn placed his large, work-roughened hand gently on her abdomen. A moment later, the baby kicked against his palm, and his face transformed with wonder. "Strong little one," he murmured. "Like its mother," Eleanor said with a small smile. Quinn's eyes met hers, and something passed between them, a current of understanding, of shared humanity. "Yes," he agreed softly, "exactly like its mother." That night, lying in Quinn's bed while he slept on a pallet by the fire, Eleanor allowed herself to imagine, just for a moment, what it might be like to belong here, to raise her child in this peaceful place with this quiet, honorable man nearby. The fantasy was sweet but dangerous. She couldn't expect Quinn to shoulder her burdens indefinitely. Once the snow cleared, she would need to move on. The storm finally broke after a week, leaving 3 feet of snow blanketing the landscape. Quinn set out for town the following morning with a list of supplies they needed and a promise to return before dark. Eleanor spent the day cleaning the cabin thoroughly, wanting to repay Quinn's kindness in whatever small ways she could. She was baking bread when she heard the crunch of snow outside, but instead of Quinn's familiar tread on the porch, there came a sharp knock. Heart racing, Eleanor approached the door cautiously. "Who's there?" "Name's Wilbur Tate, madam. I'm the doctor from Elkhorn Creek. Quinn Evans asked me to stop by." Eleanor opened the door to find a gray-haired man with kind eyes and a leather medical bag. "Please come in, doctor. Quinn was concerned about you," Dr. Tate explained as he removed his snow-covered coat. "Said you'd been through quite an ordeal before reaching his place. Asked if I'd check on you and the little one." Tears welled in Eleanor's eyes at this evidence of Quinn's thoughtfulness. "That was very kind of him." Dr. Tate's examination was thorough and professional. "You're undernourished," he concluded, "but the baby seems strong. With proper care and rest, I believe you'll both be fine. How far along did you say you are?" "About 7 months, I think." The doctor nodded. "That sounds right. You should deliver sometime in late January, I'd guess. I hope you're planning to stay put until then. Traveling in your condition would be dangerous for you both." Before Eleanor could respond, the door opened and Quinn entered, arms laden with supplies. His eyes immediately found Eleanor's, checking that she was well. "Doc Tate," he greeted. "Thanks for coming out." "Happy to help," the doctor replied, packing up his bag. "I was just telling Miss Pierce that she and the baby appear to be doing well, but she needs continued rest and good food, and no traveling until after the birth." Quinn nodded as if this confirmed what he already knew. "She'll have what she needs." Dr. Tate gave Quinn a considering look. "Town's already talking, you know. Cassie at the general store saw you buying women's things and baby supplies. Rumors will spread." Eleanor's face flushed with shame. She hadn't considered how Quinn's reputation might suffer from harboring her. Let them talk, Quinn said firmly. Miss Pierce is under my protection. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. After the doctor left, an awkward silence fell between them. Eleanor finally broke it. I'm sorry. I never meant to cause gossip that might harm you. Quinn set down the packages he'd brought. You haven't done anything wrong, Eleanor. The world doesn't see it that way, she reminded him. An unmarried pregnant woman staying with a bachelor. It will damage your standing in the community. Quinn's jaw tightened. This is my land. I decide who stays on it. Even so, Eleanor persisted. Once the baby comes, it will be even worse. People will assume. Let them assume, Quinn interrupted. Then more gently, unless you want to leave? Is that what you're saying? No, Eleanor admitted, the truth spilling out before she could stop it. I don't want to leave, but I can't let you sacrifice your good name for me. Quinn crossed the room to stand before her, his expression serious. What if there was a way to stop the gossip and give your child a name? Eleanor stared at him, uncomprehending at first, then with dawning understanding. Quinn, you can't mean marriage, he said simply. I'm proposing marriage, Eleanor. Her heart hammered in her chest. But you barely know me. I know enough, Quinn replied. I know you're brave and strong. I know you're willing to face impossible odds for your child's sake. I know that having you here has made this cabin feel like a home for the first time. He paused, vulnerability crossing his features. What I don't know is if you could ever see me as more than the man who took you in during a storm. Eleanor studied his face, the earnest blue eyes, the strong jawline softened by his neatly trimmed beard, the tiny scar above his right eyebrow. This man, who had fought in a war and built a ranch from nothing, who read poetry by firelight and touched her belly with reverence, was offering her and her child a future. It wouldn't be a real marriage at first, Quinn continued when she didn't immediately respond. Just a legal arrangement to protect you both. But perhaps with time. Eleanor reached for his hand, her own trembling slightly. You would claim another man's child as your own? Any man can father a child, Quinn said quietly. It takes more to be a father. Tears spilled down Eleanor's cheeks. Yes, she whispered. If you're certain, then yes, I will marry you, Quinn Evans. They were married 3 days later in Elkhorn Creek's small church. The ceremony was brief, attended only by Dr. Tate and his wife as witnesses. Eleanor wore a simple blue dress Quinn had purchased in town, her auburn hair braided and pinned up. Quinn wore his Sunday best, his normally unruly dark hair slicked back neatly. As they exchanged vows, Eleanor was struck by the solemnity with which Quinn spoke his promises. This was no mere arrangement to him, she realized. He meant every word. You may kiss your bride, the minister said when they had exchanged rings, a simple gold band for Eleanor that Quinn had somehow procured on short notice. Quinn bent down, his lips meeting hers in a gentle, chaste kiss that nevertheless sent warmth spreading through her body. When they parted, his eyes held a question she couldn't quite decipher. The ride back to the ranch was quiet, both of them wrapped in their own thoughts. Quinn had borrowed a wagon with a covered back to protect Eleanor from the cold, but the journey was still uncomfortable over the snow-packed roads. Are you all right? Quinn asked as he helped her down from the wagon once they reached home, their home now. Yes, Eleanor assured him, though nervousness fluttered in her stomach. Just tired. That evening, Quinn made a celebratory dinner and opened a bottle of whiskey he'd been saving for a special occasion. He poured a small amount for Eleanor, just a taste. Doc Tate says it won't harm the baby, and they toasted their new beginning. After dinner, the inevitable moment arrived. Quinn cleared his throat. I've made up the second bedroom for myself. It's small, but comfortable enough. Relief and an unexpected twinge of disappointment mingled in Eleanor's chest. "You don't have to give up your room permanently." "I meant what I said, Eleanor. This isn't I don't expect." Quinn struggled to find the right words. "You've been through enough. You deserve time." Eleanor stepped closer to him, summoning her courage. "And if I said I don't want to begin our marriage with separate rooms?" Quinn's eyes darkened. "I would say you honor me more than I deserve." "You saved my life," Eleanor said softly, "and my child's. You've given us both your name and your protection. I may not have expected to find you, Quinn Evans, but now that I have." She placed a hand on his chest, feeling his heart pound beneath her palm. "I want to be a true wife to you." Quinn's hand covered hers. "I want to be a true husband to you, Eleanor. But we have time. I don't want you to feel obligated." "Not obligation," she assured him. "Choice. My choice." That night, they came together as husband and wife, with tenderness and discovery. Quinn was gentle, mindful of her condition, his touches reverent. Eleanor found herself responding with a passion she'd never known was possible, as if her body had been waiting for this man's touch all along. Afterward, as they lay together in the darkness, Quinn's hand resting protectively over her belly, Eleanor felt the baby kick against his palm. "I think he approves," Quinn murmured sleepily. "He?" Eleanor asked with a smile in her voice. "Or she," Quinn amended. "Either way, a blessing." In the weeks that followed, their marriage deepened from arrangement to genuine partnership. Quinn taught Eleanor about ranch life, how to predict weather from the way the cattle behaved, how to identify the tracks of different animals in the snow, how to manage the accounts in the leather-bound ledger he kept. Eleanor, in turn, transformed the cabin into a true home. She sewed curtains for the windows from fabric Quinn brought from town, rearranged the furniture to create more space, and filled the place with the smells of home cooking. She even convinced Quinn to move his guitar from the corner to a place of honor near the fire, and in the evenings, he would sometimes play, his deep voice joining the melody in songs from before the war. As Christmas approached, Eleanor's belly grew larger, the baby active and strong. Quinn crafted a cradle from pine wood, working on it in secret hours before presenting it to her on Christmas Eve. "It's beautiful," Eleanor gasped, running her fingers over the smooth wood and the delicate carvings of stars and moons on the headboard. "My father made one like it for me," Quinn explained. "One of the few things I remember about him. He died when I was young." Eleanor leaned against him, his arm automatically circling her shoulders. "Our child will know his father," she promised. "Every day of his life." Quinn kissed the top of her head. "I have something else for you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small package wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a silver locket on a delicate chain. When Eleanor opened it, she found a tiny daguerreotype of Quinn on one side. The other side was empty. "For the baby," Quinn explained. "Once he or she arrives, we'll have a picture made, so you can keep us both close to your heart." Tears filled Eleanor's eyes. "I love it, and I love you, Quinn Evans." It was the first time she'd said the words aloud, though they'd been growing in her heart for weeks. Quinn's eyes widened, then softened with emotion. "I love you too, Eleanor Evans," he replied, his voice rough with feeling. "More than I thought possible." He sealed the declaration with a kiss that conveyed all the tenderness and passion he felt for this woman who had stumbled into his life and made it whole again. January brought bitter cold and shorter days. Eleanor's time grew near, and Quinn rarely left her side, arranging for a neighboring ranch hand to tend to his cattle so he could remain close to home. Dr. Tate visited weekly, assuring them both that everything was progressing normally. On the night of January 18th, Eleanor woke to a sharp pain and the sensation of wetness between her legs. "Quinn," she gasped, gripping his arm. "It's time." The next 12 hours were a blur of pain, fear, and determination. Quinn rode through the pre-dawn darkness to fetch Dr. Tate, then returned to hold Eleanor's hand through her labor. He wiped her brow, spoke words of encouragement, and never once left her side, even when the doctor suggested he might want to wait outside as most men did. "My place is with my wife," Quinn said firmly, his eyes locked with Eleanor's. Just as the winter sun was setting, their daughter entered the world with a lusty cry that filled the cabin. Dr. Tate cleaned and wrapped the infant before placing her in Eleanor's arms. "She's perfect," Eleanor breathed, counting tiny fingers and toes. The baby had a dusting of dark hair and eyes that, when they briefly opened, appeared to be the same moss green as her mother's. Quinn sat on the edge of the bed, his face a mixture of awe and tenderness as he gazed at his wife and daughter. "She's beautiful," he agreed, his voice thick with emotion, "just like her mother." "Would you like to hold her?" Eleanor asked. With reverent care, Quinn took the tiny bundle, cradling her against his broad chest. The baby seemed impossibly small in his large hands, yet she fit there perfectly, as if made to be held by him. "Hello, little one," he whispered. "I'm your papa." He looked up at Eleanor, eyes shining with unshed tears. "What shall we name her?" Eleanor had been thinking about this for months. "Hope," she said softly. "Hope Faith Evans, because she brought us both back to life." Quinn nodded, a smile breaking across his face. "Hope, it's perfect." As Dr. Tate prepared to leave, having assured them that both mother and child were healthy, he paused at the door. "You know, when Quinn first told me about finding you at his fence line, I worried what kind of situation I'd be walking into. But seeing you three now," the old doctor smiled. "Well, I'd say fate knew what it was doing that day." After he left, Quinn settled beside Eleanor on the bed, little Hope sleeping peacefully between them. Outside, snow was falling again, blanketing their ranch in pristine white, but inside was warmth and love and the miracle of new life. "Thank you," Eleanor said, reaching for Quinn's hand. "For what?" "For taking in a starving, pregnant stranger. For giving us your name. For loving us both." Quinn brought her hand to his lips. "You gave me far more than I gave you, Eleanor. You brought life back to this ranch. To me." As they gazed down at their daughter, Eleanor reflected on the journey that had brought her here. 6 months ago, she had been destitute and desperate, cast out by her family and betrayed by the man she thought loved her. Now she was Eleanor Evans, wife and mother, loved beyond measure by a man whose quiet strength had saved her in every way a person could be saved. "I think," Quinn said softly, interrupting her thoughts, "that come spring we should build on another room. Hope will need her own space eventually, and perhaps—" He hesitated. "Perhaps she'll have siblings someday." Eleanor smiled, warmth blooming in her chest at the thought of more children with Quinn, children who would have his kind eyes or steady hands. "I'd like that very much." Outside, the Wyoming winter raged on, but within the walls of the Elkhorn Ranch, spring had already arrived in the hearts of the family within. In the years that followed, Eleanor would sometimes think back to that desperate day when she collapsed at Quinn's fence line, certain she had reached the end of her strength. Had someone told her then that the taciturn rancher who carried her to safety would become the great love of her life, the father of her children, and her partner in building a legacy that would span generations, she might not have believed it possible. But standing on the porch of their expanded home 5 years later, watching Quinn teach little Hope to ride her pony while their 3-year-old son William toddled after them and their newborn daughter Sarah slept in her arms, Eleanor knew with absolute certainty that sometimes salvation came in unexpected forms. And sometimes, when you were brave enough to accept it, that salvation transformed into something even more precious. A love strong enough to weather any storm the frontier might bring.